hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to, with, or upon. I'm Bushka on Blitz, back for the good stuff, having a look at the low-slung warrior, the true fist of Stalin, the little green tank that will not take no for an answer. The IS4. It's a fantastic little number. It's long been my favourite Tier X heavy tank. It is an absolute treasure. It's tough as nails. It has just enough alpha to really put people ill at ease, and it sure knows how to bounce a shot or two. We're going to have a quick look at the armour, which is important. We're going to talk about the mobility, the gun, and how you should be playing it to be successful, and how it is one of the more underrated tanks in Tier X. Now, this is a Patreon-sponsored post. If you haven't thought about sponsoring the channel, please do so. You can click on the Patreon link there, pop along, pledge as little as $1 a video or $1 a month, or however much you want to pledge, and it all helps to keep the channel floating and the content running like a hot faucet. Now, the biggest thing about this tank is the armour profile. I often compare it to the IS6 at Tier A because it's got that same awkward style of armour where if you're just looking at it on paper and front on an armour inspector, you think it's not that extra special. But because of the nature of the game, the constantly changing angles, the movement, the variables that it all involves, it actually bounces a lot of shots. It's got awkward, sloped armour all over it, and it can be really, really awkward and tricky to penetrate. At Tier X, you're going to run into a lot of tanks who fire high explosive anti-tank ammunition, heat, as that little Object 140 just did there. And they're going to quite often pen that because it's very good against armour. But this is what it looks like to the APCR rounds of tanks like that T62A with 258 to 268 millimeters of penetration when it's angled. You angle it at 30 degrees to the incoming target, and that's what they're going to see. And if you can hide that lower glacis, happy days. But if they switch up to heat, as they want to do, you can see with 16 degrees of angle just how green your front plate is. And you might be saying, well, that's pretty average for an armour profile. That's not going to do you any good whatsoever. What you've got to remember in Blitz is that there are hills, there are rocks, there are berms, there are boxes, there are walls. And if you can just get on the edge of a hill, like you're going to see here if you look at the inset, you can cover up that area, even if there's heat coming your way, and just expose the really heavily armoured, heavily angled sides of the IS4. You've still got a weak point on top of your turret, but if you move the tank backwards and forwards a lot, you will do an awful lot of bouncing. And there's some tanks at Tier X, like the FV4202, that simply don't have more penetration. And you're going to be able to really abuse that when you come up against them. Anyway, so its armour profile, while quite not unique, it's not normal for an armour profile to be like that. You don't have just flat sides, flat front, or a pike nose. You've got that really steeply angled armour paneling all around the tank. If you learn how to use it and how to abuse it and how to shake and wiggle and give really steep angles, you'll find that you create an awful lot of auto bounce zones on the tank. And when you're driving it around the place, that can be key, because 3 or 4 bounces on a heavy tank like this in the course of a game can really actually influence the outcome. Now, the gun is not fantastic. 0.38 dispersion, 2.9 second aim time, typically Russian, but it's got 420 alpha, 258 millimeters of pen, and 340 millimeters of pen on its high explosive anti-tank. It's actually got buffed since inception in terms of mobility. It can get 43 kilometers an hour out at the top notch, but where it really picked up a bit of a buff was in the traverse stakes. 25 degrees of traverse and 17 degrees of turret traverse. Now, just for those of you who might not know, 25 degrees of traverse is kind of the borderline of likey traverse numbers for heavy tanks. The M103 has 25 or 26 degrees of traverse on its tracks, and while you prefer more than 17 degrees of traverse on your turret, with this kind of armor profile, it's more than enough to win. Now, you'll see here on this map, we have told the M48, M46 pattern to jump in the cap. We'll defend it. Falls Creek, we don't win a chicken dinner. We've got an easy win coming here, boys and girls. It's Falls Creek. There is no accounting for humanity, and the M46 Patton is inexplicably going to leave the cap for whatever purposes, I'm not sure. On 50 odd, there he is. He's just going to walk away and drive forward and get killed. He's going to drive towards 3 Tier X tanks with the lowest alpha on any of them being 640, and he's going to do it while he has 400 hit points. And we don't need to see what Bushka's typing here, because it's better off that some things in this world remain a mystery. It's probably just some friendly reminders to go and watch some videos on YouTube, increase the knowledge base before he steps back out onto the playing field again. But when we come back, we're 2 to 3 down. We don't have a lot of hit points between the two of us, and Hoodie and I are really in a little bit of strife. And this is where we're going to get a couple of key bounces on this big dog. You see, we're going to put one into this E100 here. Probably a lucky shot. His heat goes flying over the top. But for all that, we did actually cop a couple of unlucky shots off him right at the start of this little soiree. The Jagdpanzer E100 is going to push up here. Now, one of the key things you're going to see is I'm going to poke one through his track, which stops him, increases the reload time when he fires this, or actually lowers my reload. We get a great bounce and gives us a chance to push back and get a reload on him, put one through the top of the turret. E100 is going to see his chance and push up, and this is where we're going to take that one shot. We managed to stay alive through the roll. Dump on down. Hoodie's holding the E4 on the slimmest of hit point margins, but not for long, and we're going to race around here and do the business into the side of the E4. Great game, this one. Very close. The gun on this is probably your biggest drawback. People say the armour profile isn't fantastic at all. I quite disagree. If you're smart enough and you're lucky enough to find situations on the battlefield where you can take advantage of it, you can bounce tremendously large amounts of shots. And if you've watched the most recent live stream I did, there are a couple of situations in there where I set up with Snake Eyes Warrior, and he is in the Snake Eyes now. He changed his name like Prince. You see, we set up just in situations where the DPM tank, the 251B, etc., is either behind me or just in front, and I soak up the damage in the IS4. Now, the side skirts of this, while not as thick as, say, the KV4, are actually very, very strong. And if you can find tanks like the FV4202 that's ahead of me, you can really be a bully. The FV4202 has good pen on its APCR, but it fires HESH as its premium ammunition. And as such, it's not going to do a whole lot to the IS4. It's probably one of the tanks the FV4202 likes seeing the least hull down or side scraping against it. And you see we get another one in there. All the T62A can see is a very low profile tank, because the IS4, like the IS3 and various other heavy tanks, is actually quite low profile, and that really aids it in situations like this where you only get to see little peaks and little bits of the tank itself, and that's that FV4202 bouncing off us again. Now Hoodie is pushed forward very aggressively there on the right side, and we've decided we're going to have to push up across, because if we don't, we're going to end up getting pinned between two opposing sections, the mediums on this side and the heavy drive on the left. Now the T54 doesn't want to borrow that. He's out of there. We're into the FV4202. And here we go. Pushing, pushing, pushing. Smashy, smashy, smashy. And the FV's got to get around to put shots into me, because quite simply, he doesn't have the penetration values on standard APCR to do justice to the tank. So here we are now. We're looking at the sides of that Object 704. The mobility is not terrible at all. You'll see the angle my tank's body is at all times, always trying to keep it at a 30 odd degree angle to incoming fire. 30 degrees is the just sweet spot for this tank's angling. If you can keep it at 30 degrees to incoming fire, you're going to be maximizing your armor profile. Your lower glacis is still going to be green, but if you're on a hill like this, the only real weak spot they're going to see is the very top of your turret, which can be quite a difficult target to hit. given that it's a very, very small area and that some of the guns that we're facing are exceptionally large. And that Object 704 just cannot get a clean look in. We're into the IS8 over here, supporting Hoodie. 3 tanks to 2. There's an M48 pattern. Hoodie's going to push up on the pattern. I'm going to nut the Object 704. Again, look at the angle that I'm at. Always at that angle. Never give them a square angle on this tank. And there's the IS8. Blowing the engine boost, which I find to be more useful in this tank than the nerfed version of Adrenaline. And we're going to get down in the IS8. Hoodie's actually going to be on a 5 kill here, going for a 6, so we're not going to finish off this IS8 with any great degree of certainty. We're just going to let it happen and then point the gun away, because we want Hoodie to get that last kill for sure and certain. So there you have it, boys and girls. A little bit of tipping on the IS4. You've seen, if you've watched the previous IS4 video, you've seen a tremendous amount of side scraping, and I can only direct you to that because it is required viewing if you want to play this tank. But I didn't want to just rehash the same old, and I wanted it to be a little bit more interesting in terms of gameplay and the final outcome. And those 2 games were pretty close ones, so they made for some interesting viewing. I highly recommend it. It works superbly in platoon with an IS7 because the 7 is a little bit quicker, faster straight line speed, and it has that trollish armour, so you can get the 7 really being the spearhead tank while you work angles off obstacles and even off the arse of the IS7. So if you can get the IS7 hull down pushing forward, you can side scrape off the back of him, and it is absolutely fantastic as a breakthrough area if you're on Discord or some kind of TeamSpeak. Anyway, boys and girls, I've been Bushka on Blitz. I hope that's helpful for you. Remember, the gun may be a bit Hand of Stalinish with 0.38 dispersion and a 2.9 second A time. If that's the case, I like to run the gun laying drive on this, the enhanced gun laying drive. Really suck that aim time out, or a V-stab, and a vents and gun rammer, obviously. You should be running the crew skills rations with this tank as a primary. If you're only going to run one ration, that's the one you want to run because you really need help with that gun handling. Be that as it may, it is a big, nasty heavy, so you want to be up close and personal. And if you can find a hill to side scrape off, a box to side scrape off, anything like that, you are going to be an immovable object for most of the tanks you're going to meet in the game. I'm Bushka on Blitz. You humans have been wonderful, as always. Check out the Patreons page. There's going to be a new page going up, www.bushkaonblitz.com. Won't be up for probably another week yet. I am absolutely having a ball ache trying to get that thing sorted out. It is 100% torture, and I would not recommend web design to any human who wants to stay in their right mind. Stay safe on the battlefield, team. Until next time.